Hello, my name is Jenna. This is Books Love Jenna, and we are here to talk about the next few stories in The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. We're really getting into the good stuff now, friends. We are getting into the good stuff now. Oh, fresh cup of coffee. We are getting into the good stuff. So, here we go. Today, we're going to talk about Stockings, Church, The Man I Killed, and maybe Ambush. Let's start with Stockings, which starts on page 111, at least in my copy of the book. It directly follows the sweetheart of the song Trebong now, and it is basically another way that a woman is present in war. So there's a lot of women. There's a lot of women in this. If you haven't read Kristen Hanna's The Women, then I strongly suggest that when we have finished reading Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried, that you go and you pick up, even if you're not a Kristen Hanna reader, that you go and you pick up Kristen Hanna's The Women, in which she writes about female nurses that were in frontline hospitals on the battlefield in Vietnam, and how when they return, it's hard enough for the soldiers who return to find support. But when the women who were in war return, they're literally told to their faces by people who were not there, you never went to war, no women went to Vietnam. No women went to Vietnam. And so that book was just published in the last couple of years. And it's really interesting that women play such a vital role in The Things They Carried, which was written in the 1990s by a man. and there are still people who I have spoken to about The Women since Kristen Hanna published it, that are still surprised to think that there were women who went to Vietnam. Now, none of the women that are in here are nurses, but there are women present, both physically and emotionally, in Vietnam with these soldiers from beginning to end. Not to mention the actual Vietnamese women who would have been present. So it's a just very interesting thing to think about women in relation to war, and how we even now almost kind of erase the idea that there are women present in war. But in Stockings, we know about the sweetheart of the song Trebong. We've talked about that one. But now let's think about Stockings. So because it's so short, I tend to read quite a lot of the actual story itself here. But let's just go ahead and take a moment and get our bearings. Let's get our bearings back into this world. So Henry Dobbins was a good man and a superb soldier, but sophistication was not his strong suit. The ironies went beyond him. In many ways, he was like America itself, big and strong, full of good intentions, a roll of fat jiggling at his belly, slow of foot, but always plodding along, always there when you need him, a believer in the virtues of simplicity and directness and hard labor. Like his country, too, Dobbins was drawn towards sentimentality. Even now, 20 years later, so fictional Tim O'Brien, writing this story as the narrator, falls into sentimentality. He's admitting without admitting that he is also sentimental, because you've got Dobbins was drawn towards sentimentality. 20 years later, I myself, I can see him wrapping his girlfriend's pantyhose around his neck before heading out into the ambush. Now, these are kind of like a talisman for him. They keep him safe. He thinks that wearing them keeps him safe. It was his one eccentricity, the pantyhose. It's also a thing he carries. It's one of the things he carries, which means he's not just carrying the pantyhose, he's carrying the woman who wore the pantyhose, and the relationship that he has with the woman who wore the pantyhose, and the country and the freedom and the innocence of the time and the place and the moment that the woman who wore the pantyhose lives in, is from, represents. It's a lot to carry. And he wears it around his neck. The pantyhose, he said, had the properties of a good luck charm. He liked putting his nose into the nylon and breathing in the scent of his girlfriend's body. He liked the memories this inspired. He sometimes slept with the stockings up against his face, the way an infant sleeps with a flannel blanket, secure and peaceful. More than anything, though, the stockings, and there's that word I used, I must have inadvertently remembered it, but the stockings were a talisman for him. They kept him safe. They gave access to a spiritual world where things were soft and intimate, a place where he might someday take his girlfriend to live. Like many of us in Vietnam, Dobbins felt the pull of superstition, and he believed firmly and absolutely in the protective power of the stockings. They were like body armor, he thought. Whenever we saddled up for a late-night ambush, putting on our helmets and flak jackets, Henry Dobbins would make a ritual out of arranging the nylons around his neck, carefully tying a knot, draping the two leg sections over his left shoulder. There were some jokes, of course, but we came to appreciate the mystery of it all. Dobbins was invulnerable, never wounded, never a scratch. In August, he tripped a bouncing Betty, which failed to detonate, and a week later he got caught in the open during a fierce little firefight. No cover at all, but he just slipped the pantyhose over his nose and breathed deep and let the magic do its work. So the pantyhose, they've taken on epic proportions in memory, of course. And they are like the hallucinogenic drugs, like the pebble in the mouth, like the bringing over of the girlfriend. These are ways to escape the present moment. In this case, the literal danger of the present moment. It's escapism. It's a form of escapism, which superstition allows all of them to buy into just a little bit. It turned us into a platoon of believers. You don't dispute facts. But then, near the end of October, his girlfriend dumped him. He's at war. He's at war. He's brought her over in the form of these stockings, which he religiously wears around his neck. And she, not even present, abandons him. Religiously, he wears them, breathing her in, holding her close. His faith in her, his faith in these pantyhose are what keep him safe, what give him security, what he knows without a doubt to be true, that somewhere in existence there is a place of peace that he can get to, and he gets to carry just a little piece of it with him right now through the valley of the shadow of death. And then, in the midst of the valley, she turns her back on him. Are you picking up what I'm putting down here? I hope you are. I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down. She's his religion. These pantyhose are like the sign of his religion, his cross. She's his God. She abandons him in the middle of this war because they had seen this God protect him over and over again, despite logic, despite reality. Over and over again, he was protected and kept safe and given a sense of peace. And then it abandons him. His God abandons him. They're all going to lose a little bit of faith in the afterlife, in heaven, in protection, in the sense that there is something out there bigger than them that cares. Near the end of October, his girlfriend dumped him. It was a hard blow. Dobbins went quiet for a while, staring down at her letter. Then, after a time, he took out the stockings and tied them around his neck as a comforter. "No sweat," he said. "The magic doesn't go away." He decided to keep his faith, even though he felt abandoned. And our next story, no coincidence, is church. Church. One afternoon, somewhere west of the Batnang Peninsula, we came across an abandoned pagoda, or almost abandoned, because a pair of monks lived there in a tar paper shack, tending a small garden and some broken shrines. They spoke almost no English at all, and when we dug our foxholes in the yard, the monks did not seem upset or displeased. Though the younger one performed a washing motion with his hands, no one could decide what it meant. The older monk led us into the pagoda. The place was dark and cool, I remember, with crumbling walls and sandbag windows and a ceiling full of holes. "It's bad news," Kyoa said. "You don't mess with churches." But we spent the night there, turning the pagoda into a little fortress, and for the next 7 or 8 days we used the place as a base of operations. It was mostly a very peaceful time. Each morning, the 2 monks brought us buckets of water. They giggled when we stripped down to bathe. They smiled happily while we soaped up and splashed one another. On the second day, the older monk carried in a cane chair for the use of Lieutenant Jimmy Cross, placing it near the altar area. Bowing and gesturing for him to sit down, the old monk seemed proud of the chair and proud that such a man as Lieutenant Cross should be sitting in it. On another occasion, the younger monk presented us with 4 ripe watermelons from his garden. He stood watching until the watermelons were eaten down to the rinds, then he smiled and made the strange washing motion with his hands. Though they were kind to all of us, the monks took a special liking for Henry Dobbins. "Soldier Jesus," they'd say. "Good soldier Jesus." So here, I'd like to take you back to page 47. We're with Elroy Birdall, and we are trying to decide whether or not we are going to escape into Canada or go be a soldier in Vietnam. So this is on the Rainy River. Page 47 is the midst of On the Rainy River. So going back to 114, where we are with the monks, and they're calling Henry Dobbins Soldier Jesus. We skip back to page 47, where we find this statement from Elroy. It says, "He had a way of compressing large thoughts into small cryptic packets of language. One evening, just at sunset, he pointed up at an owl circling over the violet-lighted forest to the west. 'Hey, O'Brien,' he said, 'there's Jesus.'" And we haven't talked about this quote at all. This is the first time we're talking about this quote. It won't be the last. But you've got the West, which is the United States, the Western Hemisphere. They're currently in the East. So in page 114, you've got Soldier Jesus said by 2 monks in the East. And then here you've got this owl floating around in the West. And not O'Brien, Birdall says to fictional O'Brien, "There is Jesus." Let's keep going. Let's keep going back to page 27. On page 27, we are in the midst of, page 21, because we were on 47. Page 21. On page 21, we are in the midst of the first story, The Things They Carried. And in the last paragraph of that page 27, We will have talked about this one before. This will sound familiar to you. It says, at night on guard, staring into the dark, they were carried away by jumbo jets. They felt the rush of takeoff. Gone, they yelled. And then velocity. Wings and engines. A smiling stewardess. But it was more than a plane. It was a real bird. A big, sleek, silver bird with feathers and talons and high screeching. They were flying. The weights fell off, nothing to bear. They laughed and held on tight, feeling the cold slap of wind and altitude soaring, thinking, it's over, I'm gone. Okay. Go back to page 114, where these soldiers, Jimmy Cross's soldiers, mind you, Jimmy Cross, who's leading the soldiers in the battalion, in the things they carried in the first story in this collection of stories. And we know how that one turns out, right? They lose Ted Lavender, or Lemon. Did they lose Lavender or Lemon? They lose Lemon in the first one. Lavender and Lemon are the same person. They lose Lemon in the first one, in that story, because Jimmy Cross is escaping in a memory of a woman back home. A woman who doesn't want him. A woman he skirted but couldn't get to. She doesn't really want him, Martha. She's there. She's friendly. She's willing to communicate with a person at war, but she doesn't want the intimacy with him that he longs for with her, and he is escaping into a dream of that intimacy. It helps him feel safe. And he carries a pebble in his mouth that she gave to him on a beach. And he attributes meaning and intimacy to it that she never intended. And he's got it in his mouth, and he's thinking about her when Lemon is shot, blown into the air. On page 114, Jimmy Cross and his men are creating a safe space, a feeling of peace. They're letting down their guard in the presence of these two monks in this pagoda, in this place of worship, in this church in the East. In the West, in the past, but in the West, you've got this bird that's flying that represents Jesus, that represents freedom, that represents something that you can visually see and imagine and understand, but not own, not contain, not domesticate. Keep going further back. You've got hallucinogenic drugs that you take to escape where you actually are. So like Jesus is like a drug, the pantyhose are like a drug, the pebble is like a drug, all of which, like a bird, help you fly away. You're not there. You're not in danger. You are in a place of peace. So in this pagoda with these two monks eating this watermelon, sitting in this wicker chair, feeling like, of course, we are safe here. I can trust my girlfriend whose pantyhose I wear. I can imagine that Martha will love me eventually. I can envision a religion that will protect me. I'm safe in this thing. I'm safe as long as I've got this thing with me, this thing that is wild and flies away. Squatting, I'm back in the pagoda. Squatting quietly in the cool pagoda, they could help Dobbins disassemble and clean his machine gun, carefully brushing the parts with oil. The three of them seemed to have an understanding, nothing in words, just a quietness they shared. You know, Dobbins said to Kiowa one morning, after the war, maybe I'll join up with these guys. Join how? Kiowa said. Wear robes, take the pledge. Kiowa thought about it. That's a new one. I didn't know you were all that religious. Well, I'm not, Dobbins said. Beside him, the two monks were working on the M60. He watched them take turns running oiled swabs through the barrel. I mean, I'm not the churchy type. When I was a little kid, way back, I used to sit there on Sunday counting bricks in the wall. Church wasn't for me. But then in high school, I started to think how I'd like to be a minister. Free house, free car, lots of potlucks. It looked like a pretty good life. You're serious? Kiowa said. Dobbins shrugged his shoulders. What's serious? I was a kid. The thing is, I believed in God and all that, but it wasn't the religious part that interested me. Just being nice to people. That's all. Being decent. Right, Kiowa said. Visit sick people, stuff like that. I would have been good at it too. Not the brainy part, not sermons and all that, but I'd be okay with the people part. Henry Dobbins was silent for a time. He smiled at the older monk, who was now cleaning the machine gun's trigger assembly. But anyway, Dobbins said, I could never be a real minister because you have to be super sharp. Upstairs, I mean. It takes brains. You have to explain some hard stuff, like why people die, or why God invented pneumonia and all that. He shook his head. I just didn't have the smarts for it. And there's the religious thing, too. All these years, man, I still hate church. Maybe you'd change, Kiowa said. Henry Dobbins closed his eyes briefly and then laughed. One thing for sure, I'd look spiffy in those robes they wear, just like Friar Tuck. Maybe I'll do it, find a monastery somewhere, wear a robe and be nice to people. Sounds good, Kiowa said. The two monks were quiet as they cleaned and oiled the machine gun. Though they spoke almost no English, they seemed to have a great respect for the conversation, as if sensing that important matters were being discussed. The younger monk used a yellow cloth to wipe dirt from a belt of ammunition. What about you? Dobbins said. How? Well, you carry that Bible everywhere. You never hardly swear or anything, so you must. I grew up that way, Kiowa said. Did you ever think about being a minister? No, not ever. Dobbins laughed. An Indian preacher, man. That's one I'd love to see. Feathers and buffalo robes. Kiowa lay on his back, looking up at the ceiling, and for a time he didn't speak. Then he sat up and took a drink from his canteen. Not a minister, he said, but I do like churches. The way it feels inside. It feels good when you just sit there, like you're in a forest, and everything's really quiet, except there's still this sound you can't hear. Back to page 47, where we saw Jesus in the form of an owl. One evening, just at sunset, he pointed up at an owl circling over the violet-lighted forest of the West. The safety of the West. You're in a forest and everything's really quiet. Yeah, you ever feel that? Sort of. Kiowa made a noise in his throat. This is all wrong, he said. What? Setting up here? It's wrong. I don't care what, it's still a church. Dobbins nodded. True. A church, Kiowa said. Just wrong. When the two monks finished cleaning the machine gun, Henry Dobbins began reassembling it, wiping off the excess oil. Then he handed each of them a can of peaches and a chocolate bar. Okay, he said. Didi Manu, boys, beat it. The monks bowed and moved out of the pagoda into the bright morning sunlight. Henry Dobbins made the washing motion with his hands. "You're right," he said. "All you can do is be nice. Treat them decent, you know?" All of this washing of the hands reminds me of two things. So when they say washing the hands, I'm envisioning this sort of thing. And it reminds me of two things. Thing one, it reminds me of Macbeth. Well, maybe not thing one, but in this order, I will present them to you. We've got Macbeth. And of course, there's the out damn spot where they go in and they kill King Duncan and their hands are covered in blood. Okay, let's get specific here. In case you're not familiar with Macbeth, you have this guy, Macbeth, who's told that he will be given these two leadership positions that he doesn't currently have. These three witches, they meet him on a moor on the way back from the battle, and they're like, "You're going to become, you are the Thane of Glamis, you're going to become the Thane of Cawdor, and you're going to become the king." And the current king, Duncan, still lives. On the way back to his castle from the battle, he sends I almost said an email. He sends an email to his wife, saying, he sends a message to his wife saying, you know, "These witches came and told me this. Isn't that crazy?" And she gets it in her head that if it's going to happen anyway, we might as well make it happen. They think that it's going to happen anyway because he is, upon return to the king after the battle, awarded, I guess, the fiefdom of Cawdor in addition to his current one of Glamis. And so he is in charge of these two places. And part of the witch's prediction came true. And so he thinks, well, if that part came true, then I will become king. And his wife says in her head, well, if you're going to become king anyway, we might as well speed up that process. We'll just kill King Duncan. He's old anyway. And so they do. They kill King Duncan. He goes in to kill. He's having second thoughts. He's not really sure that this is what should be done at all. But then he sees this, he hallucinates or sees a ghostly dagger that guides him to the door. And he kills the king, his cousin and friend, who was a good man. And he accidentally, they're supposed to set it up so that the porters to the king that they got drunk so that they would pass out it will be set up to look like they had killed the king. And he forgets to leave the dagger in the room. He brings the dagger out with him and meets his wife, and she's like, "Why do you still have this dagger?" And he's like, "I can't go." She's like, "You have to go put it back." And he's like, "I can't go back in there. I'm not going back in there." So she takes it and she goes and puts it back. So now both of their hands are covered in blood. And he's freaking out. And she's like, "A little water will cleanse us of this deed. Let's wash our hands. A little water will cleanse us of this deed." But then near the end, so much happens. But then near the end, she is sleepwalking. She's catatonic. She's messed up because so many people are dying as a result of this one action that they took to kill a person for ambition. And she, in her dream-walking state, is constantly washing her hands, but the blood never leaves. Out damn spot. A little water cannot cleanse them of this deed. And this is supposed to remind the reader or the watcher of something else. Pontius Pilate in the Bible. Do you want Barabbas or do you want the King of the Jews? Give us Barabbas. Fine, give them Barabbas. I wash my hands of this matter. It is not my responsibility. A little water will cleanse me of this deed. And here we have these monks saying, I'll give you some watermelons. A little water will cleanse me of this deed. I'm feeding the enemy. I'm housing the enemy. I'm helping the enemy by cleaning the very gun that they will use to kill my brothers and sisters. A little water will cleanse me of this deed. Additionally, on page 117, did you catch the morning sunlight, the bright morning sunlight, which should remind you always of Kurt Lemon? And we are in Kurt Lemon land because we are in Jimmy Cross land. The man I killed. The man I killed. Okay, so I currently have Hosier singing Take Me to Church in my head because it is church. So in my head, on repeat, a little bit distractingly, I've got Take Me to Church. So we've got Stockings, which followed immediately after On the Rainy River, which was then immediately followed by church. We're definitely talking about faith here. We're definitely talking about God. We're definitely talking about salvation. We're definitely talking about sin and the forgiveness of sin. It's all building to the man I killed. His jaw was in his throat. His upper lip and teeth were gone. His one eye was shut. His other eye was a star-shaped hole. His eyebrows were thin and arched like a woman's. His nose was undamaged. There was a slight tear at the lobe of one ear. His clean black hair was swept upward into a cowlick at the rear of the skull. His forehead was lightly freckled. His fingernails were clean. The skin at his left cheek was peeled back in 3 ragged strips. His right cheek was smooth and hairless. There was a butterfly on his chin. His neck was open to the spinal cord, and the blood there was thick and shiny, and it was this wound that had killed him. That's the introductory sentence to this chapter. The great amount of detail about a character that we do not know. The great amount of detail about a person who you do not know, but you were there for the most intimate last event of their life, their death. You were the catalyst for the most intimate last event of their life. And you do not know them, but you do not look away. You do not look away, you see it. The detail serves to make the individual human. This is not just a target. This is not just an enemy. This is a person in great detail. We get more details about him, and we actually get quite intimate details about his life, the life of a boy that we don't know at all. It says, there's more description, and then we get to the part where his rubber sandal had been blown off. One lay beside him, the other a few meters up the trail. He had been born, maybe, in 1946 in the village of Maike, near the central coastline of Quang province, where his parents farmed and where his family had lived for several centuries, and where, during the time of the French, his father and 2 uncles and many neighbors had joined in the struggle for independence. He was not a communist, he was a citizen and a soldier. In the village of Maike, as in all of Kongnai, patriotic resistance had the force of tradition, which was partly the force of legend, and from his earliest boyhood, the man I killed would have listened to the stories about the heroic Trung sisters and Tran Huangdao's famous rout of the Mongols and Lai Loi's final victory against the Chinese at Totdong. He would have been taught that to defend the land was a man's highest duty and highest privilege. He had accepted this. It was never open to question. Secretly, though, it also frightened him. He was not a fighter. His health was poor and his body small and frail. He liked books. He wanted someday to be a teacher of mathematics. At night, lying on his mat, he could not picture himself doing the brave things his father had done, or his uncles, or the heroes of the stories. He hoped in his heart that he would never be tested. He hoped the Americans would go away. Soon he hoped. He kept hoping and hoping, always, even when he was asleep. He's just like fictional O'Brien on the Rainy River. He's just like the American soldiers who follow the stars and stripes, and now there's a star blown into this boy's face. And then you've got Azar. Do you remember Azar? Azar is from Spin. He's the guy who kills the puppy. And he's all excited about the way that this death has happened. Kiowa is telling him to go away, and he just can't get over how great of a kill it was. And then we get some repetition of that star-shaped hole. We get the star-shaped hole multiple times. The slim young man lay with his legs in the shade. His jaw was in his throat. His one eye was shut, and the other was a star-shaped hole. The star-shaped hole was red and yellow. Over and over again. We also get the butterfly again. The butterfly was making its way along the young man's forehead. All along the trail, there were blue flowers shaped like bells. There's this life and this beauty side by side. There's this death and grotesqueness right beside life and beauty. On page 123, we see the butterfly again. We see the star again. One eye was a star. You've got Kiowa trying to get people to stop staring, and yet we are staring. We are seeing just as they saw every detail, and we get the flowers again. There is this beauty amongst this destruction. It's hard to read, and it's meant to be hard to read because they are making you a first-hand witness of this event, which you are being asked to not look away from. The corpse lay almost, I'm on 123, the corpse lay almost entirely in shade. There were gnats at the mouth, little flecks of pollen drifting above the nose. The butterfly was gone. The bleeding had stopped except for the neck wounds. Kiowa picked up the rubber sandals, clapping off the dirt, then bent down to search the body. He found a pouch of rice, a comb, a fingernail clipper, a few soiled piasters, a snapshot of a young woman standing in front of a parked motorcycle. He's just like them, and these are the things he carries. Kiowa placed these items in his rucksack along with the gray ammunition belt and rubber sandals, because now Kiowa will carry him. And then he squatted down. I'll tell you straight truth, he said. The guy was dead the second he stepped on the trail. Understand me? We all had him zeroed. A good kill, weapon, ammunition, everything. Tiny beads of sweat glistened at Kiowa's forehead. His eyes moved from the sky to the dead man's body to the knuckles of his own hands. So listen, you best pull your together. Can't just sit here all day. Later he said, understand? Then he said, 5 minutes, Tim. 5 more minutes. And we're moving out. The one eye did a funny twinkling trick, red to yellow. His head was wrenched sideways, as if loose at the neck, and the dead young man seemed to be staring at some distant object beyond the bell-shaped flowers along the trail. After his years at the university, the man I killed returned with his new wife to the village of Maike, where he enlisted as a common rifleman. He knew he would die quickly. He knew he would see a flash of light. Kurt Lemon, Ted Lavender. He knew he would fall dead and wake up in the stories of his village and his people. Kiowa covered the body with a poncho. Hey, you're looking better, he said. No doubt about it. All you needed was time, some mental R&R. Then he said, man, I'm sorry. Then later he said, why not talk about it? Remember, Kiowa always wants to talk it out. Then he said, come on, man, talk. He was a slim, dead, almost dainty young man of about 20. He lay with one leg bent beneath him, his jaw in his throat, his face neither expressive nor inexpressive. One eye was shut, the other was a star-shaped hole. Talk. I said we talk about ambush, but I think we need to take a break. I think we need to take a break. Because what we've got here is the same story that we've been hearing over and over and over and over again. But this time it's through the perspective of the other side. It's still, that's not exactly right. It's not one of the American soldiers that has been killed. It's not a buffalo. It's not a puppy. It's a Vietnamese soldier, but that Vietnamese soldier is a mirror of fictional Tim O'Brien. They're killing themselves in killing each other. And we're going to take a pause. Ambush is going to be powerful. We'll talk about that a little bit later this month. We'll talk about next time, we'll talk about ambush, style. We'll talk about ambush and style, because the month after that, we're going to need to talk about a quite long and important story called Speaking of Courage, followed by Notes, which goes hand in hand with it. These all go hand in hand with each other, but those particularly go hand in hand. So we'll stop there. We'll talk about ambush next time, because even though it goes very, very closely with The Man I Killed, which goes very, very closely with church, which goes very, very closely which goes very, very closely with Stockings. Even though ambush really does belong in a conversation with the previous three stories, I think we need a break. So we'll take a break now, and we'll pick up later this month with ambush and style, I think. Is that it? Ambush and, yeah, ambush and style. It's all coming together. It's all coming together. We're about halfway through, and it's all coming together. Until we meet again, let's go read.